I used to think the quiet was all I'd ever need. Out here, mornings began with the rustle of wind through prairie grass and the low murmur of cattle beyond the fence line. My days had a rhythm: fence repairs, feeding rounds, riding the land. With only my dog Bo for company. It was steady, predictable, safe. But lately the silence hadn't felt like peace anymore. It felt like waiting, for something I couldn't name. And then Caleb showed up again. He wasn't a stranger, not exactly. We'd met back in college, thrown together in a group project we both grumbled through but somehow made work. He was all city confidence and easy laughter, a little reckless, a lot magnetic. We kept in touch afterward, casual texts, the occasional call when one of us drank too much and missed something we couldn't admit out loud. 3 weeks ago, he messaged out of the blue, said he was burnt out, needed to get out of LA for a while, asked if the offer to visit the ranch still stood. I said yes before I could overthink it. Now he was coming, this weekend, and I hadn't stopped thinking about it since. I found myself fixing the guest room like it mattered. New sheets, fresh curtains, even that little pine-scented candle my sister left behind last Christmas. I'd spent more time grooming the horses than usual, too, as if Caleb would notice the sheen on Dusty's coat, or the freshly oiled tack. Hell, I even shaved twice this week. The truth was, I didn't know what I expected. We'd always walked a strange line. Close enough to feel it, distant enough not to say it. There'd been moments, drunken nights where his shoulder pressed a little too long against mine, glances that felt like they held something more. But we never crossed that invisible thread. And now he was coming to my space, where I couldn't hide behind late night texts or awkward emojis. Just him, me, and miles of wide-open land. Bo trotted up beside me, his tail thumping against my boot as I stared down the long dirt road winding through the hills. I could already picture Caleb leaning out of his rental truck, flashing that crooked grin, his sunglasses sliding down the bridge of his nose. I told myself it was just a visit, a break for him, a change for me. But some part of me, the part I usually kept locked up tight, wondered if this was the start of something different, something that might finally break the silence. Caleb arrived with a duffel bag slung over, one shoulder and a sunburn blooming across his cheeks. His boots were too clean, his denim jacket more for looks than function. But that grin, that was the same. Still allergic to voicemail, I see, I called out as I leaned against the porch, railing. He dropped his bag and came up the steps like he'd been doing it for years. Only if it comes with that country drawl of yours, he shot back, flashing that lazy smirk as he pulled me into a hug. Brief, but tight. I told myself it didn't mean anything when I didn't let go right away. He smelled like cedar and city cologne, something sharp that lingered when he pulled back. The first few hours passed easy enough. I showed him around the property, pointed out the trails, the stream, where deer came to drink in the early mornings. He cracked jokes about how he'd die in the wilderness and made me promise to rescue him if he wandered too far. Seriously, though, he said later that evening, propped up on a hay bale in the barn while I fed the horses, I forgot how still it is out here. My brain hasn't shut up in weeks, but here, he paused, then added softer, it's quiet in a way I didn't know I needed. Something in his voice made me look over. He wasn't smiling for once, just watching the horses, one hand absently stroking the straw beside him. It made my chest ache in a way I didn't want to unpack. I guess I'm a pretty decent escape plan, I said, trying to lighten the moment. He grinned again. You're more than decent, Walker. That night, the storm rolled in faster than I expected. We were supposed to camp out near the ridge, something Caleb insisted on doing to get the full cowboy experience. We'd ridden out just after lunch, packed light, even brought marshmallows like overgrown kids. But by nightfall, the sky had turned the color of old bruises, and thunder growled low over the hills. I thought you said it'd be clear tonight, Caleb shouted over the wind, ducking into the canvas tent as I secured the horses. I said probably clear, I muttered, climbing in after him. The rain hit hard, drumming on the tent in frantic bursts. Inside, the space was barely big enough for two grown men, our sleeping bags pressed side by side. No room to turn without bumping knees or shoulders. "Well," he said, flopping back onto his rolled-up jacket. "This just got cozy." I laughed, nervous. "You cold?" "Maybe a little. But I'm not cuddling you yet." "Yet?" I raised an eyebrow and he laughed. Genuine and bright, like the storm didn't matter at all. We lay there in the flickering lamplight, trading old stories. That time he flunked our biology quiz and blamed it on me, distracting him with cowboy, charm, or the college bonfire where he tried to ride a mechanical bull and split his jeans clean open. I caught myself watching him between laughs, how his mouth tilted when he smiled, how his eyes crinkled when he wasn't trying to be cool. There was something in those quiet moments between our jokes, a weight that settled when he looked at me and didn't look away right away. Once our hands brushed in the dark. I could have moved mine. I didn't. He didn't either. The space between stayed charged, just enough to feel it, not enough to name it. And when the lightning lit up the tent, I turned my face just in time to catch him already watching me. We didn't say anything, but something shifted then, something neither of us wanted to admit yet, and still I could feel it, like the first pull of a current you hadn't realized you were swimming in all along. By morning, the world outside the tent was soaked and sagging. The rain had let up just before dawn, but the trails were slick with mud, and the horses were jumpy from the thunder that had carried through half the night. I unzipped the tent and stepped out into the gray light, boots sinking a little too deep into the earth. Caleb poked his head out after me. His hair was a mess, dark and tousled, curling a little at the ends from the humidity. I should have looked away, but I didn't, so he yawned, rubbing his neck. "Do we ride back now or build a raft?" I chuckled despite myself. "We wait. The trail's too dangerous like this. Give it a few hours to dry up." He looked around at the mist hanging low over the hills. "You're the boss, cowboy." The tent was still damp inside. Our sleeping bags had soaked through in the corners, and my spare flannel shirt had picked up a chill. I handed it to Caleb. Without thinking, he paused, eyeing it. "Won't you need this?" "I'll manage." When he slipped it on, the sleeves hung past his wrists. It looked ridiculous on him. Too big, too soft, too mine. We spent the morning in the tent playing cards on a small wooden crate I'd hauled up for gear. Caleb won most hands, but he was a terrible bluffer. His tells were obvious, a twitch of the lip, a raised eyebrow, tapping his knuckles against the floor. But he laughed. "God," he laughed, like the city hadn't touched him after all. "You ever get bored out here?" he asked at one point, his voice quieter than usual. "Like, really bored? Lonely even?" I kept my eyes on the cards. "Sometimes, not always. You ever wish you had someone around?" My throat felt dry. I shrugged, hoping it passed for casual. "Sure, company's good." There was a long silence between us, just the shuffle of cards, the distant groan of wind bending tree branches outside. Then he said so quietly I almost didn't catch it. "Sometimes I forget what it's like to feel close to someone. Like really close, not just crowded." I looked up. He was watching me, not smiling, not joking, just watching. Before I could respond, the wind picked up and the tent groaned as one of the corner ties came loose. The flap blew open, letting in cold and a spray of misty rain. "Damn it, stay put," I said, and lunged out to secure the rope, cursing the mud sucking at my boots. By the time I got back in, soaked to the knees and dripping wet, Caleb was rummaging in the supply bag. "Okay," he said with mock drama. "Bad news, both sleeping bags are damp. Good news, I found 2 emergency blankets and enough trail mix to last us a nuclear winter." I chuckled as I peeled off my wet jacket and hung it on a hook. "Not the worst camping trip, then." He tossed me a mylar blanket which crinkled loudly in my hands. Then he sat back down, blanket wrapped over his shoulders, hair still messy, cheeks pink from the cold. He patted the space beside him. "Come on. Body heat's a thing, right?" I hesitated. It was innocent. It was logical. It was also the one. Thing I wasn't sure I could do without crossing some line I'd built in my head for years. But I did it anyway. I sat down, close. Closer than I ever had before. Our shoulders touched first, then our thighs. Then I felt the quiet shiver of his breath against my arm as we both leaned back. Neither of us said anything. The blanket rustled as we adjusted, and then he tilted his head, resting it lightly against mine. I froze. "It's okay," he murmured, like he could feel the tension in my shoulders. "I don't bite." That made me laugh. A short, nervous burst. "Maybe I do." He turned slightly, just enough that I could feel his gaze on me again. "What if I don't mind?" My heart thudded, so loud I was sure he could hear it. I didn't answer. Couldn't. I'd spent so long keeping things unspoken. Years of silences, of brushing things off as jokes, of convincing myself that what I felt wasn't real, because it never had a place to land. But now, here, we were out of room to avoid it. His fingers brushed mine under the blanket. Not a grab. Not a bold move. Just the barest casual contact. But it stayed, and I didn't move away. Inside, everything twisted. I wanted more. God, I did. The warmth of him beside me. The way he leaned just a little closer like he belonged there. The scent of my shirt on him. How he wore it like it was nothing, like it had always been his. But the fear crept in too. That if I reached, he might flinch. That I might ruin what we already had with one wrong word, one misread moment. And still I didn't move. The storm had passed by late afternoon, but we didn't rush to pack up. We just sat there, the silence between us different now, thicker. Somehow, but not uncomfortable. It wasn't spoken yet, but something had cracked open between us, and neither of us seemed in a hurry to close it again. The sun dipped low behind the hills by the time we saddled up. The trail had dried just enough to make it back without risking a spill. But even as I led the way down the ridge, I could feel the air between us shift. Charged, unsettled. Like thunder lingering long after the storm had passed. Caleb rode quietly behind me. Not his usual quiet, the kind that came with awe or peace. This was different. I could feel it in the silence. Tight. Coiled. I kept glancing back at him, but his eyes stayed on the trail. We got back to the ranch just before dusk. The barn smelled like damp hay and saddle leather. I unsaddled the horses while he hung his jacket on the hook by the door. Every few minutes I caught him looking at me, like he wanted to say something but couldn't start. And God help me, I was no better. I was terrified if I opened my mouth, the wrong thing would come out. Or worse, the right thing. Later, after the horses were fed and the barn shut tight against the wind, I found him sitting on the porch swing. Legs stretched out, eyes on the horizon where the last light bled into a bruised sky. I hesitated at the screen door. Then I stepped out, sat down beside him. The swing creaked beneath our weight. A gust of wind rolled across the open field, carrying the scent of damp grass and wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney. Caleb spoke first. "I almost didn't come," he said, voice low. "When you invited me, I mean." I looked at him. "Why, what?" he huffed, running a hand through his hair. "Because I didn't trust myself. I didn't think I could just be around you again without screwing things up." My chest tightened. I stared out at the field. "You wouldn't have." "You say that," he said softly. "But Walker, you don't get it. I've been trying to bury this for years. I thought it was just a phase back then, something that would pass once I moved out, got a job, dated around. But it didn't." His fingers gripped the edge of the swing. "It got worse," he said. "Or better, I don't know. Every time you texted me, it was like a punch to the gut. I'd spend hours rereading your messages like a teenager, and then hate myself for it." I swallowed hard. My hands were clenched in my lap. "You never said anything," I whispered. He let out a humorless laugh. "Neither did you." I looked, down, ashamed. I was scared. "Yeah," he said. "Me too." The silence stretched between us. A wind chime tinkled somewhere near the barn. Frogs started singing in the far-off pond. Then he turned toward me. I kept thinking maybe I was reading you wrong. That all those glances, the way you looked at me sometimes. I figured it had to be in my head. It wasn't, I said, before I could stop myself. Caleb froze. I felt it, every inch of the moment tightening, holding its breath. He turned his body fully toward me now, knees brushing mine. Then why didn't you say anything? My throat felt tight. Because it would have changed everything. Because I thought if I said something and you didn't feel the same, I'd lose the only person who ever felt like home. His eyes glistened, catching the last gold from the sky. I already lost you once, I added. When you left for the city. When you stopped calling as often, started dating. People I couldn't hate but wanted to. And every time I saw your name light up my phone, I felt this stupid hope that maybe this time you'd say you missed me like I missed you. I did, he said. Every damn time. I looked at him then. Really looked. His face wasn't guarded now. It wasn't pretending. All the smirks and deflections were gone. What I saw instead was raw, unfiltered vulnerability. I love you, Walker, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I've been in love with you since that night we sat on your roof and watched the stars, and you told me about your mom's favorite constellation. I think it broke something open in me. I think it healed something too. I couldn't breathe. Tears stung my eyes and I didn't try to blink them away. I love you too, I said, the words trembling out of me like I'd been holding them for years. Because I had. And I've hated myself every day I didn't say it. He reached out, tentative at first, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed. Then his fingers found mine. I gripped them like a lifeline. The world felt still. So still. Like the universe had been holding its breath for us and we were only now learning how to exhale again. He leaned in slowly. No rush, no demand. Just waiting. For me. For us. And I met him there. Our foreheads touched first, then noses brushed. I felt his breath warm on my lips and I closed the space between us. The kiss was soft. Careful, like we were both afraid we might shatter if we pressed too hard. But then his hand came up to my jaw, and I leaned into it. And the kiss deepened. Not desperate, just certain. Certain in a way I hadn't felt in years. When we finally pulled back, I rested my head against his shoulder. His hand found mine again, our fingers twining like they'd always meant to. I was never really good at reading signs, I murmured. Good thing I brought a whole damn neon one this time. He whispered back, lips brushing my temple. We sat there as the sky turned darker, stars pinpricking the night above us. The kind of stars you could only see out here, uncut, unspoiled, just like this moment. And for the first time in forever, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The stars had scattered themselves generously across the sky by the time either of us moved again. I hadn't even noticed how cold it had gotten until Caleb tugged me a little closer beneath the threadbare blanket we'd fetched from the porch chest. My cheek rested against his shoulder, the fabric of his shirt warm and smelling faintly of cedar and leather. It was quiet, but not awkward. Not anymore. I could feel the shift, like something had settled, like gravity had finally done its job after years of pulling us in the same direction. So, Caleb murmured, his voice thick with lingering emotion but edged with a smirk. Are you always this dramatic when you confess your love, or am I just lucky? I chuckled, nudging his side with my elbow. Only for you. Usually I just send a cryptic text and ignore the fallout. Good to know, if you ever want to break up, just ghost me and I'll get the hint. I looked up at him. Not happening. He tilted his head, eyes soft. No. I shook mine slowly. No. You don't. Just get to show up after all this time, kiss me under the stars like we're in some movie, and then vanish again. I wasn't planning to, he said, quieter now. The wind picked up slightly. He pulled the blanket tighter around our shoulders. I meant what I said earlier, he continued. I've been carrying this for so long, Walker. All the what-ifs, the should-haves. It nearly drowned me some nights. I took his hand again, letting our fingers slide together. I know the feeling, I admitted. I used to stand out in that pasture just staring at the road, wondering if you were ever gonna drive down it again. He looked guilty at that. I felt it ripple through him. I didn't mean to disappear. I know, I said gently. You were figuring yourself out. So was I. A pause stretched between us again. But it was the good kind. The kind where everything unspoken didn't feel like avoidance but shared understanding. I don't want this to be a moment, Caleb said finally. I want something real. With you. I looked at him, heart steady now. Even if it's messy, I asked. Especially if it's messy, he said with a crooked grin. We've already done complicated. I think we're overdue for something. Honest. Honest sounds nice, I said. Then with a small grin of my own, added, I mean, you're still gonna annoy the hell out of me, that hasn't changed. Obviously, I have a quota of sarcastic remarks to meet every day. I'm just being efficient. We laughed, together this time, easy and familiar. I leaned back against the swing, pulling him with me. He rested his head against mine. The breeze tickled the fringe of my hair. I don't know what this looks like yet, I said. You've got your life in the city and I've got this place. I've been thinking about that, he said. Before I came out here, I was already restless. My lease is up in a couple months. I was considering a change. I raised an eyebrow. A change like what? Maybe something with more open sky, he said, his voice low. Something slower, something that lets me wake up next to you. My chest fluttered, unexpected and warm. You sure? I asked. It's not exactly glamorous out here. He leaned in and kissed the corner of my mouth, soft and sure. It's not about glamour. It's about where I feel like I can breathe. I swallowed, emotion catching in my throat. Well, I murmured, you're welcome to take over the morning feedings if you're so eager for ranch life. Oh, God, he groaned dramatically. I said I was in love with you, not suicidal. I laughed full and real, and he laughed too. And somehow it felt like we'd been doing this for years. Maybe we had, just in glances, in silences, in what we never said before. Now we had the rest of our lives to say all of it, and I planned to start tomorrow. With fresh coffee, 2 mugs, and his stupid grin across the table from me. The next morning, I woke to the sound of bacon popping in the cast iron skillet and someone humming off-key in the kitchen. For a brief second, I thought I'd dreamed the whole thing. The confession, the kiss, the weight finally lifting after years of silence. Then I rolled over and saw Caleb standing in my flannel pajama pants and absolutely nothing else, squinting, at a half-burnt piece of toast like it had personally wronged him. You planning to burn down the kitchen before breakfast? I croaked, voice still heavy with sleep. He turned around, spatula in hand, and grinned. Thought I'd make you breakfast. So far I've succeeded in making a mess. I sat up, stretching until my back cracked. You do know ranch mornings. Don't usually start with a 5-star meal, right? Right, he said, mock serious. I'll make sure the toast is only partially black next time. Got it. He brought over a plate with 2 eggs, a few bacon strips, and the saddest excuse. For toast I'd ever seen. I took it anyway, smirking. Thanks, I said. Real gourmet. Shut up and eat it, it's a love language. He sat beside me on the edge of the bed, our shoulders brushing. And for a second, we just sat there like it was the most natural thing in the world because maybe it was. I'm thinking of staying longer, he said between bites. Yeah, I tried to sound casual, but my stomach did that fluttering thing again. Like, how long? He shrugged. Indefinitely, maybe. Long enough to figure things out. Long enough to see if this, us, is as good in the sunlight as it is under the stars. I glanced at him, heart thudding like a drum in my chest. And if it is? He turned to me, eyes warm and sure. Then I stopped running. A long silence stretched between us, but this one didn't need to be filled. It was full already, with unspoken understanding, with years of longing finally named. with a future that wasn't so uncertain anymore. I could use a hand around. "The ranch," I said, picking at the edge of my toast. "Oh no," he laughed. "You're not roping me into feeding chickens and fixing fences." "Too late," I grinned. "You kissed the rancher. Now you've got chores." He rolled his eyes, but I saw the smile that pulled at his mouth. That look, the one that told me he wasn't going anywhere. After breakfast, we went outside. The morning air was brisk, the ground still damp from the storm, and mist hovered low over the fields like the land was still deciding whether to wake up. Caleb stood beside me on the porch, mug of coffee in hand, his free one finding mine without, asking. Our fingers laced together easily, naturally, like we'd done it 1,000 times before. "I used to stand here and wonder what it'd be like," I said softly. "To have you here again. Not just visiting, but staying, being part of this place, of my life." He looked out over the fields, the barn, the endless stretch of open sky. "I think I was always meant to come back," he said. "I just didn't know what I was looking for until I stood next to you and realized I'd found it." I turned to him and he leaned in again. This time no hesitation, no question. The kiss was soft, familiar, filled with promise. When we pulled away, I rested my forehead against his. "We're gonna figure this out," I murmured. "Even if it's slow, even if it's messy." He smiled. "Slow and messy sounds perfect." And as the wind picked up and rustled the trees, I felt something click into place. Not like a door closing, but one swinging open. We stood there, hand in hand, watching the sun rise over the hills. Two boys who had once been afraid to speak their truth, now letting it echo in every glance, every touch, every quiet morning. Shared. This wasn't the end of our story. It was only the beginning.